Get ready for an uplifting experience with Coached Soul. Join us as we bring you the dynamic duo of Steve Hudgens, a licensed professional counselor, and Kenya Evelyn, a transformational leadership coach. Together, they'll guide you through engaging episodes filled with valuable insights and actionable tips on mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Coached Soul is your go-to podcast for empowering discussions that will help you thrive. So let's get started and welcome our hosts, Steve and Kenya.
All right, welcome back to Coached Soul. I mean, we're coming into the middle of June. We had great Father's Day weekend in the past.
Amazing.
You know, Kenya, it's just, I don't know, how's things there in Nashville?
It is hot. It is amazing. One would think that I'm used to the amazingness of having my children around since we homeschool, but let me tell you, it is different. They're totally kind of crazy. They want to be going, and sometimes they just want to be staying. Yeah, and is it weird and awesome at the same time that we're halfway through the year? What's happening here? This is so
Yeah,
incredible.
that's funny
Hmm.
because, you know, growing up, I wanted to hurry up. I want to be an adult. I want to be adult. And now that I'm an adult, it's like slow down, slow down, slow down. And it's, you know, I can't believe we're already 6 months into the year. And
Yes.
it's just cray in regard to just trying to slow down to just to where I can catch my breath. And I know that, you know, between us that, you know, we were supposed to have recorded, and that kind of led into something. You want to kind of start us off with
I
what's
love
going
that.
on?
And I love that you said, you preface when you were growing up, you were in a hurry to be an adult, and then you're here and you're like, oh yeah, let's squeeze this moment. So Steve and I, we're really good friends. And I just love the fact that we can be ourselves in and out of the microphone of this podcast. And at the same time, this past week, I noticed a big pattern. And I thought to be vulnerable enough to share with you guys because patterns will always show up. And it doesn't mean you are not healed, it means that you're ready to see this pattern. Like how unloving of God, source, the creator of all things, would be to show all the needings, ins and outs of your becoming and say, so you see this mess, you got to heal everything. That's not what he does. Actually, he reveals the things you're able to take care of in that moment. And I just want to I want to preface that way because I've been in a healing journey and a mindful, it's not even mindful, just really strong mindset of who I am and my identity and where I'm going as a leader, as a mama, as a friend. And here we are, big childhood pattern of hiding, fear, shame. It shows up. So let me just tell you what happened. We have a time and space where we set aside to record this for you guys. And let's just say the podcast working hours of Coach It. So usually on Friday mornings we get together and we connect and we record, and Steve edits and plug it into you guys, and it's beautiful. And again, Vacation Bible School, and I'm driving the kids back and forth to different places, and I reschedule the podcast recording, and then I reschedule again, and then I disappeared. And poor Steve, and I say poor Steve with the comma here because this is a co-creation. As I'm telling you this story, listeners, I want you to think about how do you behave? How do you show up in your life? It's not for me to be vulnerable and tell you about my crunchy areas that I'm working on. It's for you to see that number one, you're never done. Number two, can you be humble enough to see yourself in the mirror and walk yourself through the new identity? Because when I hide, when I don't show up, when I feel like, oh my gosh, now it's one day, now it's 2 days, now it's 3 days. Okay, now he hates me. And now I have all the stories in my head. Seriously. And let me ask you something, listeners. When I feel this way, shame or, oh, now it's too long. Now he's going to think that I am blah, blah, blah. Is that the wise women? Is that Kenya, the mentor, the mother, the strong? I call it the wise woman. Is that the wise woman in me speaking or the wounded child? What is it, Steve?
It's the wounded child, because here's where I want to integrate something here really
Sure.
quick. This is not the first time that this has happened, that in the past we have miscommunicated or misaligned our meetings, and that's okay. But the response was that we were able to hold safe space for one another. So it wasn't that I was going to, lash out or be angry or things like that. So she knows, Kenya already knows that how I'm going to hold safe space for her. But
But it's
Kenya,
not logical.
right.
It's not logical.
So continue describing what this little childhood, that this inner child that you were experiencing. What was
Yes.
happening with the
So
guilt?
what was happening in my head is I need to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, I'm going to get a spanking. Literally, I just want to climb in the tree and stay all the way up on the high in the highest branch, or turtle up in underneath the covers or something. It was such a feeling of I messed up so big. How do I come back for this? Oh my gosh, I let him hanging. Da 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 da. And it was none. You have given me through all those months we've been together. You have given me so much actual evidence that you were a kind friend, that I can say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up the schedule and I messed up over and over again, or whatever it is. And I broke my word and forgive me and we move on. But I couldn't bring myself to do it until, and you say, Kenny, what was the turning point for you? Which, by the way, your text message just made it worse, because now, like, oh, great. Now he's taking ownership of something he didn't do. He was saying, I'm sorry if I
So
did something.
So to
I'm
set this
sorry.
up a little bit more is the
Uh-huh.
fact that, she said on Friday, hey, I'm going to text you when I get done. Do you have a wide open schedule on Friday? And I said, sure, we can do that. I'm working on my dissertation, but I can hold space that we can record. I didn't hear anything on Friday. Didn't hear anything on Saturday. Didn't hear anything. So I sent a Facebook messenger of, here's some topics I'd like to talk about. Hey, is everything okay? Are we going to set something up? Well, it went on.
Yeah.
And so Wednesday, I sent a text message, and all I said was, I apologize for causing a rift. And so,
And I was
and
like, no, you are not apologizing for this. You did nothing. This is, and listeners, do you see yourself in this? Like, how many times do we actually have concrete evidence of somebody's um, uh, heart and goodness, but we feel shame? I felt shame. I felt like I just messed up so bad, there's no return. And it's not, and the truth is, it's not truth at all. Those are lies after
right,
lies after lies. So, what I got to be with, how I brought myself back, was I went outside, I grounded, and I literally was walking around the circles, holding my heart and talking to God. And it's like, okay, what is here on me to see? Why do I feel this? And then I literally felt in my spirit, I'm carrying some kind of shame from childhood that I have to be perfect. And if I mess up, I'm thrown away.
right,
If and when I am imperfect, I mess up, I will get a spanking. I will be punished. So I was avoiding pain by creating pain. I was avoiding separation, and in reality, creating separation. And then I coached myself out of it. It's like, okay, in which areas am I doing this? Because it's not just with Steve. Which other areas in my life do I show up hiding, not having the courage to clean up that this is just a trigger from childhood? And now I'm sitting with the trigger. Are you ready to move? Because I don't want to carry you for the rest of my life.
So I'm glad you kind of said that too, because I want to tell on myself a little bit too about this situation. Before in the past, I would have reacted. My anxious attachment disorder that I had, I would have been reactive. Okay, Kenya, you're not talking to me. What's going on? Try to push to try to find an answer. Because to me, growing up, the silent treatment,
Right.
I would in my home, it was prevalent, and so I cannot handle somebody having the silent treatment, and that was a trigger. But since I've been able to work on myself, now I don't have an anxious attachment anymore. It's more the secure attachment. And knowing that to try to have safe space for all of this, I just simply reached out to you. And if I had done the reactive, this would have caused a lot more turmoil. And so it's recognizing if somebody else is not responding, just assume innocence here and just say, you know what, I apologize for this rift. And whether I did anything right or wrong, it's the of just saying, hey, Kenya, I want to hold some safe space of what's happening here.
That's right. That's right. And we do that. I do that. I'm not going to speak for the collective. If you do that, I hope this story is an inspiration for you to come back to truth. Just listen to all those voices in your head and say, is this really truth?
Right.
Is this who I am? And whose voice is this? Is that the way I would speak to a friend today? Or is it the child in me that is really raising her hand? That's the thing, though. When your child, when the child in you come out to talk to you, embrace her, embrace him. They feel safe to show up and show you where it hurts. This is still hurts over here. Can you take care of me? And here's the work I do that I feel like it's so rewarding. I get to reparent this child the way I'm able to, the way I would to with my own kids. If my kids come in shame and in fear, I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're still in shame. I just can't believe you're believing those lies. I would just embrace him. I would just embrace her. And I would say, it's okay, babe. You want some water? Can I hug you? And then whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here. Whenever you're ready to move through it, I'm here.
It's easier, or seems or appears to be easier, to try to do that on the outside when there's another person present. But when you're alone in your thought processes, right? Things can spiral. And yes, I was in that moment in my head. Okay, did I say anything that caused some doubt within Kenya? Did I do something here? And so I had to be able to challenge my thinking and say, wait a minute, Steve, Kenya and I have a great relationship. We hold space for one another. And so I needed to reach out and humble myself to say, okay, look, here's some safe space. But either way, when we felt guilt and shame, yes, I get it. And I worked with couples who I hear, well, I'm afraid of I'm afraid of my wife's reaction, or I'm afraid of his reaction. And we have to look at it to analyze it in a different perspective, because sometimes if something happens and that other person's reactive, we need to think about, is this person okay today? Did they get enough sleep? Do they have headache? Are they in pain? What's causing this negative reaction that may or may not be normal for them, so that we can process and work through. And so even though Kenya thought, hey, I'm going to feel some type of punishment, even knowing the truth that I've always held space for her, Kenya, we worked through this together, and being able to say, hey, we recognize, and this is the reason why we want to do this podcast, because it's about learning how to free ourselves from behavioral patterns that sometimes get in the way of our relationships, and sometimes healthy relationships. And if we don't recognize these patterns, then what happens? It starts eating at our relationship, and therefore it deteriorates the relationship. Your thoughts, Kenya?
Yes, the patterns, and I call it the patterns because I don't want to take ownership of my patterns. I want to take ownership. My choice, my stand is to take ownership of my new identity. This is the old identity that showed up, the wounded identity that showed up as a pattern. And my gift to you today, our gift to you today, is that look around. Where do you see patterns that are not serving you? If it happened once or twice or three times, okay. Okay, there's something here. You might not know what the pattern is, but you notice the pattern. Sit with it, pray with it, meditate, ask God, what is in here for me to see? And many times you cannot do it by yourself. Raise your hand, we'll support you. Or seek support. And just know that your nature is love. My nature is love. My nature is abundant. My nature is acceptance. This is why we are able to be so magnetized by children. And I know what you're thinking. If you're mad, only if they're in their only if they're in their good behavior. It's like, well, the truth is, even if they're in their bad behavior, they're so authentic. Like you can't make them like something they don't like. They're so authentic. When they like something, they love it. When they don't like something, they close their mouth. They're so in tune and in truth with their hearts. So my invitation for you today is to sit with that truth that you see around you. Okay, does this match the women that I see myself being? And if it doesn't match, raise your hand. Oh, that is my wounded child. Would I turn down a child that is bleeding? Shut up, stop bleeding, da 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 da. Or would you get a band-aid, a hug, and say, sit with me, tell me what's going on? And later, when I told my girl, my inner child, to sit with me and tell me what was going on, she's like, I am really afraid that I'm going to get a spanking. I'm really afraid that I mess up beyond the point of no return. And I'm like, did you do something else that I don't know about? Because, it's so unlogical. It's not conscious. And what runs our life is much more of the unconscious than the conscious, as we know through all the psychology studies. So I hope this is just not just an inspiration for you, but a way of saying that this is how you can sit and love. So I was afraid that I was not going to receive the love and the forgiveness from Steve because I was judging me. I was not giving me the love and the forgiveness. I was like, you screw up again. You did this. You didn't return. So do you really need somebody else to pass judgment on you when you are writing self-judgment?
That's interesting in what you share there, because a lot of times we do judge ourselves when we say, well, I don't want nobody judging me. Well, you just judged yourself when
You
you
just did
talk
it right
about that
there.
statement, right? And so that's an unhealthy pattern of thinking. Those patterns can change. For those people who are in relationships, whether it's narcissistic or borderline personality disorders, there is a thing called hypermentalization. It's a hypermentalizing impairment, or it's a tendency to over attribute mental states to others. It's been identified among individuals with personality disorders. And what it does, it's just you think that person is saying something, but it's misinterpreted within your own mind of what that person's analyzing. So a lot of times it's easier to maybe clarify, maybe ask questions to clarify as to, how are you interpreting what I'm saying to you? It's breaking these unhealthy patterns of being reactive in state to the person who is either hypermentalizing or has a pattern that's not healthy, that's hurtful. And it also at the same time, Kenya, we're both internalizing and being able to say, okay, because this is who we are, because of our healthy state of mind. We want to hold space. We recognize our patterns. And so I want to spend the last 5 to 8 minutes that we have left here and talk about some of these patterns. How do we help our listeners to be able to identify a pattern that is not healthy, especially when we have interaction with other people, whether it's family members, because sometimes family members can invoke that unhealthy pattern that we are used to. And so sometimes our environment that we put ourselves into can create these unhealthy patterns. So, can you talk a little bit about what it is that people can use as a tool to help identify some of these patterns?
Yes. So the way I do is very analog and intuitive at the same time. And by analog, I mean pen and paper. I sit with my pen and paper, and I ask divine guidance in, and I say, okay, what is happening in my body right now? Because you can really feel when you're in shame and in fear, right there in the anus, we just, we contract. And when we contract our bodies, you feel more of the thing you're feeling. You feel more fear. You feel more shame. You feel more all of those lower vibrations, which is the opposite of the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. And by the way, this is not towards other people, it's towards us first. I have never interpreted that the way I'm interpreting it right now. It's love for self, patience for self, peace for self. So as I sit with my pen and paper and I go, okay, when things in my life get broken, when, like, my daughter, literally before I got here, I was 10 minutes, but I text, right? I texted, I'm going to be 10 minutes late today. My daughter had broken my favorite goblet, gold goblet. And she was crying, and I didn't cry, but I look at her as like, baby, is this about breaking the goblet? Yes, it's beautiful. Or is it about not listening because I told you not to touch? This house is 90% broken, not because of accidents, but because you didn't listen when I say don't touch. And I remember in the past, and that was a break in a pattern, because in the past I have written in my journal of patterns. Yes, I do have a journal of patterns, that I just can't believe that everything about me is broken. Everything around me is broken. My shit got ripped. Sheets, like, you sleep on it, it's ripped. My lamp got broken. The boys, the dogs, they scratched the floor, and now there's scratches around the bed. I mean, and I just start like, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by broken and scratching things. How did I allow? So instead of going to the how did I allow, and self-pity and I sit with that. When did I become okay that pattern of broken things, that I accept the pattern of broken things? Because once you accept a pattern, it becomes a magnetism of attraction, and you attract all that pattern around you by everybody else. Right. I'm going to say that again. Once you accept a pattern, the pattern stays. And it magnetizes, and the people around you start treating you the same way. Your houses start being completely broken. Yeah, when you accept a standard, a pattern, it becomes your temperature. So I would journal. Listeners, go back and journal. What are the things in your life that keep happening, and then you say you don't want, you don't like, but they keep happening? It is a pattern.
That when you think, and we're almost out of time here, not only are we supposed to be able to hold safe space for that other person, a healthy pattern is also holding a safe space for yourself.
It's all self.
Yes.
Steve, it's
Yes.
100% self first,
Okay.
right? Because now we're talking worthiness. When did I become a person that doesn't deserve pretty things?
Right.
When did I became a person that feels like you can be talked in this way?
Right.
You can be talked down to. When did I become a person that feels like you're okay with crumbs everywhere? If you're looking around and you see crumbs instead of the entire croissant, notice and write it down. It is a pattern. But here's the trick. It's like, okay, can I write it down? You didn't tell me how. Well, listen, this is the part that is very important. Can you write it down without judgment? You write it down as an observer, as if you were a doppelganger right here, watching your life. You write as an observer with zero judgment and neutrality. And now you go one by one in each pattern and you say, where do I feel this in my body? Where do I feel where do I feel shaming my body? Where do I feel
Right.
judgment in my body? And you stay in that part of your body. And the way I do it, because I work with the Holy Spirit, some people work with other people, anywho, you send light to that part of you. You allow memories to come and you ask, when was this pattern first started? Did it come from me? Did it come from my parents? Is this generation, or did I create this in this lifetime?
Well,
And you
and
just sit with those answers.
the thing of it is, sometimes we don't like to see what's in the mirror because we don't like looking at ourselves. And I want you to know, listeners, that you are loved. It's learning how to love yourself and just all the discrepancies that we feel about ourselves. And it's learning to accept the pain that we've been in or been through, learning that it does not define us because we're more than the sum of all the things that's ever happened to us.
100%.
And it's breaking that pattern. Go ahead.
I want to come back to something you said. It was so important. If you don't like to look at your own image, that is the number one pattern in your list of patterns. Because then you are not being a human being. You're being a human doing. That means you're going through life just doing the things just to get it over, just to get it done. You're in zombie land. And you're actually avoiding being with you. I would hold eye contact with that mirror until I have a tear.
Right.
If that's the thing you're avoiding, to look yourself in the mirror, to really look at yourself. Look, I know this can be figure of speech, Steve, when you say look yourself in the mirror, but I'm saying this on a 3D reality. Literally stopping looking yourself in the mirror and sending so much love and lock the eye contact. And maybe your so much love would be to look in the mirror and say the truth and say, I hate you. My entire life, I heard blah, 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 blah. And just be on, you got to speak the truth. Otherwise, it's like putting icing, beautiful gold icing on something that is stinky, a third.
And that's a great segue to end this podcast. We hate to end it and leave it on a segue as a cliffhanger, because our next part 2 is talking about the freedom of our thoughts.
Exactly.
It's very important. So, until next time, take care and God bless.
Love you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Coached Soul, where we aim to empower and uplift you on your journey towards personal growth and well-being. Remember, as you navigate through life, you don't have to do it alone. We encourage you to reach out to professionals, seek support from loved ones, and take the time to prioritize your own well-being. Stay tuned for future episodes filled with even more valuable insights and actionable tips. Remember, you have the power to thrive. And with Coach It Soul by your side, anything is possible. Until next time, take care, stay empowered, and keep shining your brightest light. For more information, contact Kenya at kenyacoachedsoul.com.